All right, so we are now recording. I do want to check in with everybody to see if there are any questions about the assignments or the group projects, and see pretty much everybody turned in their group projects and their peer evals. Any questions before anything regarding the class before we begin?
When is the final project due?
Final project is so you had last week. What are we? Week 10, correct? So week 9 was turning in the rough draft. Week 12 will be turning in your presentation proposal. So essentially who's doing what, and turn in whatever slides that you have. They don't have to be complete. If you have slides, if you have a video or you're still working on a video, just turn in something stating that you're working on it. So basically you're just letting me know what you're going to presenting and how you're going to be presenting it. Okay. All the criteria are listed in the final project. So you'll know exactly what I'll be looking for with presentations. I'm leaning in the direction of doing live presentations because we really don't have anything to do for week 15. We're staying on track. I usually build in a little extra time, like our midterm week 7 and week 15, I build in just in case we need them for whatever reason. We're still on track. So week 15, I think we can probably build in some live presentations that day. So if you want to record them, that's fine, but you'll still be presenting that recording to the class for some kind of evaluation. And it might build in some extra credit somehow. I haven't figured that out, but that's I'll give you more information as that comes along. But yeah, I think did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
So I do have a question regarding the rough draft. Like, how are you gonna grade it? Like, are you gonna grade it like on just basically how are you gonna be hard or like?
I'm gonna be very thorough. Grade wise, you know, I'm gonna be very fair. If it looks like you've met the requirements and got enough information, got enough sources listed in there, and it looks organized, this should be very close to what your final project should look like. So if I can see that there was a valid attempt made, I'm gonna be pretty lenient on the grade.
Okay.
With that said, I'm also going to be very tough as far as the feedback that I give you. So I'm going to nitpick more on this one, because once you turn in the final project, it's done. I'm not going to really give you any feedback. You either followed my suggestions with the rough draft and made the appropriate corrections, or you didn't. And if you didn't, you know, that's going to reflect in your grade. But so it's very important if I give you feedback to follow that feedback and make sure you follow through with that final presentation, with that final paper. As far as, and I've had this happens probably more often than it should, but I do have a lot of groups that turn in garbage. You know, they'll turn in their outline, or they'll turn in like blank sections or something like that. And I can't give feedback on something like that. So I know we've already turned in the rough draft, so I'm not going to drone on too much about this. But yeah, for future reference, when you're asked to produce a rough draft, do it like you would be doing your final paper, because the more thorough it is, the more I can give you, the instructor can give you feedback, and that will help with your final paper, producing the highest score possible.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Yep. Any other questions? Okay, well, so today, and again, I kind of shared with you how this plays into motivation. We're going to talk about motivation today, and then Wednesday we'll get more into the emotion and stress side of things. But motivation is very, very embedded with how we do things and why we do them. For example, we talked about goals last week. If we have a high desire to achieve a goal or to move away from something that's uncomfortable, our motivation is going to be much higher. We're going to be much more thorough to take those steps that we need to get to where we need to be. Okay, so in essence, that's motivation. And I'm going to ask all of you in the room to quickly maybe just get a piece of paper out or take a note somewhere and list 3 things that you enjoy doing. We talked about some of them, So it might be spending time with kids. It might be reading a book. It might be playing video games. So go ahead and take something out, and we're going to circle back around to that here in just a minute. But while I'm thinking about it, write down 3 things that you enjoy doing. It could be hobbies. It could be going to school, whatever it is, whatever you can think of. First 3 things that come to mind that you want to achieve or do or whatever. Okay. Well, we'll circle right right back around to that. In the meantime, I'm going to kind of give you some definitions here. And we'll define motivation right off the bat so we understand what it is. So your book lists motivation as the process by which activities are started, directed, or continued to meet physical or psychological needs. So I'm just going to shorten this and say desire to meet. I'm just going to physiological and psychological needs. Okay, pretty simple, right? And you think about that, and think about what motivates you. It's usually to, again, your drive to meet a goal, and there could be various reasons for that. Now, like many other things in psychology, motivation can be explained through multiple theories, right? We have different ideas of how motivation happens. And your book, I think, highlights about 4 or 5 of them. There's really only one that I'm going to use today because I think it's probably the most pertinent. It's the most widely used, not only within psychology, but within management, within education. And it's very pertinent to how we view things today. And it's got a great little graphic, which is awesome too. So when we look at motivation and defining motivation, we consider it to fall into one of 2 categories: intrinsic and extrinsic. Now, intrinsic is internal motivation. Now, what is internal motivation? What do I mean by that? What is something that's internally motivating?
A motivation that comes from yourself.
Okay. So something that doesn't really have any. If you remember back in operant conditioning, when we're talking about learning, operant conditioning is what? It's a system of performing a behavior and then being rewarded or punished to either increase that behavior or decrease that behavior, right? That's how we really assume learning occurs, or the classical conditioning, right? So intrinsic is more internal. We don't really receive anything externally. We're still rewarded for doing that, but that reward comes from within. Extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, are externally motivated. So more of the traditional rewards and punishment, right? So somebody is giving us something, or we're achieving something externally, maybe money, or maybe favors or something, right? We're receiving that from the outside. So going back to your list, what are some of the things that you have on your list that I asked about? Who wants to share?
I can.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
You go first.
Okay, for me, the 3 that I wrote down was basically working out, playing guitar, and shopping.
Playing guitar and shopping. All right, so who wants to help? And maybe you can diagnose yourself here as far as which ones are intrinsic and which ones are extrinsic.
Intrinsic would be working out, I guess.
Okay.
Because like it's personal. Like if I get to where I need to be, it will be for my, just for myself basically. And then maybe, I don't know, playing guitar, like if I get really good at it, then I can play for people and then they could pay me, so that would be extrinsic, I guess.
Okay. All right. So your goal, I'm not gonna say your goal, but your idea of playing is to get better so that you could maybe be popular enough to play for
Yeah.
other people, or good enough to. Okay, okay,
Right.
I can see why that would. Okay, and then shopping.
I don't know about that one.
Well, when you shop, you do what?
I mean, you buy stuff.
Okay, so you're receiving something. So we could probably look at that as what?
Intrinsic.
Maybe, but
Or-
you're getting stuff. You're kind of rewarding your stuff. It's more external, right? So might be a little bit more extrinsic as well. I can see where you're going with intrinsic, and I'm going to kind of further explain that. How about another example? Anybody else care to share what they wrote?
I said I wanna potty train my son. I don't know if that would be extrinsic or intrinsic because I would get some satisfaction from it.
Okay, all right. And when we talk about drive reduction theory, this will make a little bit more sense to you. Something externally is causing, so his actions are external. So what would that be?
Extrinsic.
Right, because you're motivated to teach them, but that's because it's uncomfortable for you to be changing diapers, right? You're kind of promoting more independence with that. Okay, that's a good one. What were some of your other ones on there?
I said I wanted to save like money after Christmas, like a certain amount after Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to finish off this term with at least one B. Like I don't want any B's, but if I have to, I'll accept one B.
Okay. So kind of all right. So getting better grades. All right.
Yeah.
And what would you consider that, intrinsic or extrinsic?
I guess extrinsic because you'd be receiving like a grade. I don't know.
Okay, that's a tough one, and I'm going to kind of throw this out to everybody. Why did you go to college? Why did many of you decide to go to college?
To get a degree.
Okay, to get a degree.
To be successful.
So college. I'm going to kind of walk this through. So get a degree. All right. And what did you say? Was that Chevrolet or Pierre? What'd you say?
Yeah. To be successful.
To be successful. Okay.
Get a better,
What was that?
get a better job.
Better job. Okay. So successful and successful and degree, better job. Okay.
So you can make more money.
And
Better
live
job.
comfortably.
More money. Okay. Oh, well, actually, I think we're kind of going down the rabbit hole here. So let me continue with that. So better job, more dollars, right?
Yeah.
So more comfortably, better dollars, right? What do you mean by more comfortably?
Well,
Decent life.
yeah,
Less
less
stress.
stress, you know, like just being financially comfortable and not having to worry about future, basically.
Okay. So what does more money? What if we associated with more money?
You decent life. You can have a decent life.
Mm-hmm.
Riding your dream car, having your dream house, and can travel everywhere you want to have fun.
Okay. So to not want for anything, right? To not need anything is
Right.
our motivation, right? And those come down. The reason why I bring this up, and you think about this is really our base motivation for everything, even in some levels, acceptance. Okay. And I'll talk about that. This is kind of an outlier, but it still happens. But our basic needs, we've tied in with feeling more comfortable with in order to feel more comfortable, we need more money because that's what our society teaches us. We need more money to be more comfortable. In order to get more money, we need a better job. In order to get a better job, we've associated that with getting a degree and being successful. And that all stems from going to college, right? So you kind of see how we work backwards from that. And so a gentleman named Abraham Maslow kind of proposed, and your book kind of highlights this. Now you're going to see different variations of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, actually, I should have labeled this. So this is Maslow hierarchy. Hierarchy of needs. All right. So what he proposed is that at a very bottom level, we need to satisfy a hunger and thirst. Right now, for many of you that are going into management of some sort, pay attention to this, because this is going to be very important when you're working with some of your customers, or working with many and maybe even employees that you have. Right. So satisfying hunger, thirst, fatigue are really our needs to satisfy our biological, physiological needs. Okay. Next up, we have feeling secure and feeling safe and out of danger. So we look at that as more like our shelter. Many of you talked about housing and shelter, right? That's what we need to do to feel a little bit more comfortable. That's meeting your safety needs, and that's our second level here in Maslow's theory. Belongingness, love and acceptance. Now, we look at these two as physiological needs. Okay, I'm just going to abbreviate that. Above physiological needs, we have belongingness, which is feeling accepted and feeling like we belong to either community or our family or friends or whatever. It's that once all these needs are met, then we start looking for feeling accepted. And then above that, self-esteem or esteem needs. What do we need to do to feel like we're accomplished, feel like we are approved by maybe our peers? Okay, and that's a little bit higher than being accepted. Being accepted is just being a member of the group or a member of the community. But feeling competent is the next level up, feeling like you're contributing to that group in some way. All right. Then above that, we need to feel like we are able to know and understand the world around us and be able to explore. So if that kind of makes sense, once we feel like now we're contributing, let's go above that. What can we do to be leaders? What can we do to be experts?
Yeah, you erase that shit, because at the end of the day, yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
I don't think she was talking to us.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. I think that was Nicole, and I think she's on mute now. All right. So anyway, becoming experts in our field, right? And then above that, he explains aesthetic needs, the need to have more order and symmetry within our environment. And then the very top is self-actualization. So we're going to look at this tier in more of terms of psychological. And then the top tier is self-fulfillment. All right. So does that make sense?
Yep.
So physiological is meeting our physiological needs, something that we need to feel like we're satisfied and we're safe and we're comfortable. Psychological is more of the belonging and understanding, more of the mental side of things. And then self-fulfillment is above that. Now you'll see some models that have like self-transcendence. That might be more of like, I don't know, Buddhist models or something that incorporate Buddhist theories of self-transcendence. But for the most part, one of the criticisms of Maslow's theories is that not everybody strives for self-fulfillment or self-actualization. Okay, if that makes sense. So many of you, in fact, this is like a top 2% of the population, they say, might strive for self-fulfillment in some capacity. So we talk about it a lot, and we have ideas of what self-fulfillment is. And this, again, goes out to you that are going to be working with people. We have to make sure that all of these tiers are met before we can really consider whether somebody is working towards self-fulfillment or self-actualization. So let me give you an example. Say you have an employee or In my case, I'll use an example. I have a patient that comes in to see me for therapy, and they're wanting to work on being an expert in their field. All right, they see that they look back to that model that we saw where they want to go back to college. They want to do some great things so that they can feel a little bit more comfortable in their life. However, they're struggling to find a home. They don't have enough money to even pay the rent. Can we work on these tiers when we don't even have safety needs being met? What do you think? Why not?
I mean, it doesn't make sense, because if you can't, like, if you can't even eat, or like, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to like jump to the top when you don't have the basic stuff.
Right, right. And when we talk about mental health, I'll delve into this a little bit more. But we all have a certain amount of energy that we're able to expend in a day. All right. So a lot of things pull our energy and pull our attention. And we talked about selective attention when we were talking about memory, right? We have all these things going on around us. We can't absorb it all and interact with it all and deal with it all. We can't do that. It's just not physically within our realm or our capabilities to do that. So very much like our memory, we only have a certain amount of attention and energy that we can dedicate towards certain things in our lives. Now, the lower we go on this tier, the higher energy that it takes for us to expend, leaving less room for us to appreciate order or beauty or symmetry, right? Or become experts in our field, or even feel accepted or belonging because we're struggling to meet our physiological needs. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Does this make sense? Okay. So when you're working with people and they're struggling to feel like they belong in a group, does it make sense for us to start working towards them being an expert, or should we kind of work towards them feeling like they're accepted? And it may not be that they're not accepted. It may be that they feel inadequate or they don't feel like they're accepted. So it makes sense to kind of deal with these issues first before we start looking at getting them to be experts in their field. Okay. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So, so let's see, let's move forward with that. So we have also, within the realm of motivation, we have what's called drive reduction theory. So drive reduction theory. And again, this kind of ties back into Maslow's, if you can imagine, the physiological need. So what happens in drive reduction theory is we experience things that are uncomfortable, either physiologically uncomfortable or psychologically uncomfortable. So we take that discomfort and try to reduce it, right? Hence, drive reduction. Now, what do I mean by that? How many of you have had, you felt like you're hungry at some point?
Me.
Maybe, go ahead. Sorry, I thought I heard somebody. Go ahead.
You wanted me to explain something? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah. So let's say noon rolls around, and many of you are used to eating at noon. What sort of things happen when noon rolls around and it's time for lunch? What does your body do?
Growl.
It's asking for food.
Okay. So your stomach kind of growls, and you can't really focus on anything else, right? And again, kind of going back to Maslow's theory, is you can't really even study very effectively or pay attention to a conversation that you're having because you're more focused. Your body is going through physiological discomfort. All right. We call that. What's that? All right. I think. So we look at that as homeostasis, and we have this comfort zone that we like to reside in. So when we,
This actually happened. Oh, sorry.
what's that? Go ahead.
I was gonna say that this actually happened to me yesterday at work, like in the morning. I
Uh-huh.
was really, really hungry that I started to like even lose, I couldn't even focus on what I was doing, and I was like really shaking because I didn't have anything to eat the night before, and then
Mhm.
in the morning I didn't eat at all, so like I couldn't focus at all.
Okay. Okay.
And
So
then I
that,
had to stop to get something to eat, like in the middle of work.
right. So that impacted you. That impacted all your other function because all your energy was focused on your physiological symptoms of becoming satiated, becoming comfortable, right? So you probably fell into this area. You started to get a little hungry and you start to pay a little bit more focus. That's our biological drive telling us that we need to do something. And through learning, through repetitive actions in our past, we learned that when you're hungry, you go out and you find food. You go to the cafeteria, or if you brought a lunch, you bring your lunch, or if you can plan ahead that far. So we've achieved a period of hunger where we need to act. Okay. The opposite end, some people might overeat, right? Most of us try and just get into this comfort zone. We eat just enough to get to this point. But sometimes we might overdo it, right? And what happens when we overdo it? What happens when we overeat, for example?
You're too full and then you get uncomfortable. For me,
Right. Now we're uncomfortable again, right? So we look at this homeostasis as just trying to find a balance. And we do this through, again, going back to learning what works and what doesn't work. And we kind of have an idea, well, I'm not going to eat 2.5 pizzas. I'm really hungry. I might imagine myself eating 2.5 pizzas. But we also know from experience that anything beyond 4 slices is going to probably put us in this discomfort range, and we're going to have to get back. So it is a learning process, but essentially that's what homeostasis is finding centeredness. Okay. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All right. All right. So opposite of drive reduction is what we call, let's see if I can find the, I can't find the part on here. It's optimal, let's see, oops, optimal arousal. Oh, optimal, sorry. I think your book just lists it as arousal theory. I've heard it called both optimal arousal theory. So similar to what we saw with drive reduction. We're going to call this bored, adequately stimulated, and overstimulated. And many of you can probably relate to this, especially given our situation with COVID-19 and the pandemic. What does sitting at home do for some of you? Not necessarily everybody, but if say you're a very active person, and trust me, I deal with a lot of patients that go through this, but they're usually active, they're socially active, they're doing things in the community, and all of a sudden they're sitting at home. What do you feel happens in those moments?
You're bored and you feel useless.
Right. You're bored. You're on this opposite end of the spectrum. And we want to do something, even though we don't have anything that's actively making us discomfort. The act of doing nothing is making us uncomfortable. All right. So similar to what the drive reduction theory is, this is also stating that doing nothing might also cause some kind of discomfort for us. So again, similar to drive reduction, we try and meet somewhere in the middle here so that we are achieving homeostasis. We're achieving some kind of stimulation that's adequate for us. Now, we don't want to overdo it, right? We don't want to go out and cause problems, or like maybe we want some kind of activity. We're not necessarily going to go, what am I Trying to think of something that might cause overstimulation. Maybe picking a fight with somebody, right? That could go the opposite direction. So maybe we are bored and we're chomping at the bit. We have a bit of cabin fever. So we go ahead and we pick a fight with somebody. Now we have another problem. Now we're experiencing discomfort and then kind of reverting back to that drive reduction theory. So does that kind of make sense, the difference between the two of these?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Moving on. So what are some, I want to play a quick video for you, and it kind of echoes what we saw with, I put a video also on your resources, but I do want to play this for you because it's very relevant to many of you that are going into management or going into healthcare. You're going to notice this. I deal when I'm working with drug and alcohol clients. What do you think their motivation is to be working with me? Like anybody that's dealing with addiction, what is their level of motivation? Do you think? Anybody work with drug and alcohol or addiction? So I'll just share this with you. So addiction, it's one of those funny things, especially with working with clients, is different levels of motivation. And I see a broad range. So for the difference between drug and alcohol and mental health, usually, a majority of the time, mental health clients are coming to you because they want help. They're experiencing some kind of discomfort or dysfunction or distress in their life that they want to achieve some kind of assistance with, trying to figure it out and work towards a goal of some sort, either to feel like they're less stressed or less depressed, or whatever it is, whatever behavior they're doing is causing less distress in their environment, their immediate environment, or their relationships. So that's motivation. And a majority of people that come to me are motivated to getting help. Drug and alcohol or substance abuse is quite different, because clients that come to me with addiction issues are usually what? Why do they come to see me? Anybody? Do they want to come to see me? Go ahead.
Oh, I guess they
Looking
come
to
to
get
see you
more
because
pills.
they need. Go ahead, Amelia, right?
And I was just gonna say to get more pills. I don't know.
Okay. Let me take it back a little bit. Many people that go to substance abuse, and this is not nobody's fault. You probably didn't know this. Maybe people that go to seek recovery in substance abuse, most of the time are referred by courts or probation officers, or even family members, because they've recognized when we engage in some kind of addiction, we are internally rewarded, right? We're rewarding ourselves, and we feel that high or that lack of stress from whatever it is that's causing it externally. So we're rewarded when we engage in something addiction. Like for example, coffee. I woke up this morning a little behind the ball, and I needed a boost. I knew I needed to kind of get in here and get excited and pass information to all of you. So I engaged in a form of use, of substance use, because I'm relying on something external to get me going and get me moving, right? So people that go to addiction treatment usually aren't aware that they even have an addiction, or they don't acknowledge it. So it's usually an external force that brings them to see me, which is a problem, because now we have different levels of motivation. Some people might not be motivated at all, or in the maybe in the pre-contemplative stage is what we call that. Means that they haven't even wrapped their mind around that they need help. They know that there's some problems, but they don't know the steps that they need to take to get there. We might have that, maybe they're contemplative. Maybe they realize they have a problem, and maybe they want to work towards something. They just have a vague idea of what those goals would be. So within drug addiction, we see these different tiers of motivation. And my job as a counselor is to work with them to see what we can do to make those goals a little bit more realistic for them. And it's sometimes very hard, and not always successful. because again, people aren't necessarily motivated to be in there, and they'll just do the steps they have to do to get out of that situation. All right. So with that, I do want to play this quick little video. It's about 10 minutes long. There's a longer one that Dan Pink, I really like Dan Pink. He kind of highlights what motivation is and how we reward ourselves and how we're extrinsically motivated and what some of those nuances are with that. So let me get this, play this through. And he doesn't actually talk, he talks through this, and then somebody added some animation, but it's kind of just a short little skit of what he talks about. So sorry.
With remote smart parking assist.
Let me get through the.
You won't find that on a Ford, Camry.
All right. Sorry. Let me share my screen with you. Oops. There we go.
Our motivations are unbelievably interesting. I mean, I find I've been working on this for a few years, and I just find the topic still so amazingly engaging and interesting. So I want to tell you about that. The science is really surprising. The science is a little bit freaky, okay? We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think. There's a whole set of unbelievably interesting studies. I want to give you two that call into question this idea that if you reward something, you get more of the behavior you want. If you punish something, you get less of it. So let's go from London to the mean streets of Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the northeastern part of the United States. And let's talk about a study done at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Here's what they did. They took a whole group of students, and they gave them a set of challenges. Things like memorizing strings of digits, solving word puzzles, other kinds of spatial puzzles, even physical tasks like throwing a ball through a hoop. Okay, they gave them these challenges, and they said to incentivize their performance, they gave them 3 levels of rewards. Okay? So if you did pretty well, you got a small monetary reward. If you did medium well, you got a medium monetary reward. And if you did really well, if you were one of the top performers, you got a large cash prize. Okay? We've seen this movie before. This is essentially a typical motivation scheme within organizations, right? We reward the very top performers. We ignore the low performers and the other folks kind of in the middle. Okay, you get a little bit. So what happens? They do the test. They have these incentives. Here's what they found out. 1, as long as the task involved only mechanical skill, bonuses worked as they would be expected. The higher the pay, the better their performance. Okay, that makes sense. But here's what happens. But once the task called for even rudimentary cognitive skill, a larger reward led to poorer performance. Now, this is strange, right? A larger reward led to poorer performance? How can that possibly be? Now, what's interesting about this is that these folks here who did this are all economists, 2 at MIT, 1 at the University of Chicago, 1 at Carnegie Mellon, okay, the top tier of the economics profession. And they're reaching this conclusion that seems contrary to what a lot of us learned in economics, which is that the higher the reward, the better their performance. And they're saying that once you get above rudimentary cognitive skill, it's the other way around. Which seems like this kind of, the idea that these rewards don't work that way seems vaguely left-wing and socialist, doesn't it? It's kind of this kind of weird socialist conspiracy. For those of you who have those conspiracy theories, I want to point out the notoriously left-wing socialist group that financed the research, the Federal Reserve Bank. So this is the mainstream of the mainstream coming to a conclusion that's quite surprising, seems to defy the laws of behavioral physics. So this is strange. It's strange finding. So what do? They say, this is freaky. Let's go test it somewhere else. Maybe that $50 or $60 prize isn't sufficiently motivating for an MIT student, right? So let's go to a place where $50 is actually more significant relatively. Right? So let's take the experiment. We're going to go to Madurai, India, rural India, where $50, $60, whatever the number was, is actually a significant sum of money. So they replicated the experiment in India roughly as follows. Small rewards, the equivalent of 2 weeks' salary. Small performance, low performance, 2 weeks' salary. Medium performance, about a month's salary. High performance, about 2 months' salary. Okay, so those are real good incentives. Okay, so you're going to get a different result here. Well, what happened, though, was that the people offered the medium reward did no better than the people offered the small reward. But this time around, the people offered the top reward. They did worst of all. Higher incentives led to worse performance. What's interesting about this is that it actually isn't all that anomalous. This has been replicated over and over and over again by psychologists, by some extent by sociologists, and by economists, over and over and over again. For simple, straightforward tasks, those kinds of incentives, if you do this, then you get that, they're great. For tasks that are algorithmic, set of rules where you have to just follow along and get a right answer, if-then rewards, carrots and sticks, outstanding. But when the task gets more complicated, when it requires some conceptual, creative thinking, those kinds of motivators demonstrably don't work. In fact, money is a motivator at work, but in a slightly strange way. If you don't pay people enough, they won't be motivated. What's curious about, there's another paradox here, which is that the best use of money as a motivator is to pay people enough to take the issue of money off the table. Pay people enough so that they're not thinking about money and they're thinking about the work. Now, once you do that, it turns out there are 3 factors that the science shows lead to better performance, not to mention personal satisfaction. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is our desire to be self-directed, to direct our own lives. Now, in many ways, traditional notions of management run afoul of that. Management is great if you want compliance, but if you want engagement, which is what we want in the workforce today as people are doing more complicated, sophisticated things, self-direction is better. Let me give you some examples of this, of almost radical forms of self-direction in the workplace that lead to good results. Let's start with this company right here, Atlassian, an Australian company. It's a software company, and they do something really cool. Once a quarter on a Thursday afternoon, they say to their developers, for the next 24 hours, you can work on anything you want. You can work on it the way you want. You can work on it with whomever you want. All we ask is that you show the results to the company at the end of those 24 hours in this fun kind of meeting, not a star chamber session, but this fun meeting with beer and cake and fun and other things like that. It turns out that that one day of pure, undiluted autonomy has led to a whole array of fixes for existing software, a whole array of ideas for new products that otherwise had never emerged. One day. Now, this is not an if-then incentive. This is not the sort of thing that I would have done 3 years ago before I knew this research. I would have said, you want people to be creative and innovative? Give them a freaking innovation bonus. If you do something cool, I'll give you $2,500. They're not doing this at all. They're essentially saying, you probably want to do something interesting. Let me just get out of your way. One day of autonomy produces things that had never emerged. Okay, let's talk about mastery. Mastery is our urge to get better at stuff. We like to get better at stuff. This is why people play musical instruments on the weekend. You got all these people who are acting in ways that seem irrational economically. They play musical instruments on weekends. Why? It's not going to get them a mate. It's not going to make them any money. Why are they doing it? Because it's fun, because you get better at it, and that's satisfying. Go back in time a little bit. I imagine this if I went to my first economics professor, a woman named Mary Alice Schulman, and I went to her in 1983 and said, Professor Schulman, can I talk to you after class for a moment? Yeah. I got this inkling. I got this idea for a business model. I just want to run it past you. Here's how it would work. You get a bunch of people around the world who are doing highly skilled work, but they're willing to do it for free and volunteer their time, 20, sometimes 30 hours a week. Okay, she's looking at you somewhat skeptically there. Oh, but I'm not done. And then what they create, they give it away rather than sell it. It's going to be huge. I mean, she truly would have thought I was insane. Okay, it seemed to fly in the face of so many things. But what do you have? You have Linux powering 1 out of 4 corporate servers in Fortune 500 companies, Apache powering more than the majority of web servers, Wikipedia. What's going on? Why are people doing this? Why are these people, many of whom are technically sophisticated, highly skilled people who have jobs? Okay, they have jobs. They're working at jobs for pay, doing sophisticated technological work. And yet, during their limited discretionary time, They do equally, if not more, technically sophisticated work, not for their employer, but for someone else for free. That's a strange economic behavior. Economists who look into it, why are they doing this? It's overwhelmingly clear. Challenge and mastery, along with making a contribution. That's it. What you see more and more is a rise of what you might call the purpose motive, is that more and more organizations want to have some kind of transcendent purpose, partly because it makes coming to work better, partly because that's the way to get better talent. And what we're seeing now is, in some ways, when the profit motive becomes unmoored from the purpose motive, bad things happen. Bad things ethically sometimes, but also bad things just like not good stuff, like crappy products, like lame services, like uninspiring places to work. That when the profit motive is paramount, or when it becomes completely unhitched from the purpose motive, it's just, people don't do great things. More and more organizations are realizing this and sort of disturbing the categories between what's profit and what's purpose. And I think that actually heralds something interesting. And I think that the organizations that are flourishing, whether they're profit, for-profit, or somewhere in between, are animated by this purpose motive. Let me give you a couple of examples. Here's the founder of Skype. He says, our goal is to be disruptive, but in the cause of making the world a better place. Pretty good purpose. Here's Steve Jobs. I want to put a ding in the universe. All right? That's the kind of thing that might get you up in the morning and racing to go to work. So I think that, that we are purpose maximizers, not only profit maximizers. I think the science shows that we care about mastery very, very deeply. And the science shows that we want to be self-directed. And I think that the big takeaway here is that if we start treating people like people and not assuming that they're simply horses, slower, smaller, better-smelling horses, if we get past this kind of ideology of carrots and sticks and look at the science, I think we can actually build organizations and work lives that make us better off, but I also think they have the promise to make our world just a little bit better.
All right. So what do y'all think about that video, about his message? Is it different than what you would have imagined as far as motivation goes?
Yes.
Okay.
To be
This
honest,
might explain a lot of our depression problems.
Say again, Richard?
I said this might explain a lot of people's depression problems. No purpose. What's the point?
Okay. That's yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Richard. We're going to talk a lot about that when we get into some of the future chapters. Yeah. So purpose, right? People need to have a purpose in life, because if we look at those extrinsic motivators and you kind of take it back into your school days, we were rewarded. Many of us were rewarded to read, right? I think your book talked about it. We didn't really cover it in lecture, but when we're motivated to doing something through extrinsic, can't even talk anymore, extrinsic measures, we have now tied that behavior and that skill with being expected to be rewarded every time. And when those rewards aren't present, what do we see? Our motivation to perform in that task happens. We lose it, right? We lose it. We may have enjoyed reading. We may have enjoyed playing music. But as soon as those motivators are gone, we lose that. So something to keep. So what are some ways, I know we have a couple minutes left here. What are some ways that we can promote more intrinsic motivation? I know it's hard to do because we all want to work and we want to be comfortable. I think a couple of you have echoed that with what we talked about with motivation. What outside of being comfortable, what can we do to help people be more intrinsic in what they do in their jobs or in their lives? You have any ideas?
Maybe have a reward each time you do something you feel that is good.
Okay. How do you get people to feel good about what they're doing? Outside, I mean, we automatically go to money. We think of money and promotion and monetary things, but what are some, anybody have any ideas of what can we do to really promote creativity and intrinsic motivation?
maybe like advertise to people to do like what they What was that?
Is that me? Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Oh, cow. What
Okay.
happened here? Sorry. Say again, Ameli.
No, I was saying that maybe like promote like to people to do what they love the most, so it doesn't feel like it's like a bargain or something. Like so it's
Okay.
not
Okay.
hard for them to stay motivated, because when you do something that you already love, then it's like it's easier that way. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So go ahead.
Adding to that, I think that people would love to be appreciate on what they're doing. I think, yeah, as long you tell people that what they're doing is they're doing a good job, they keep motivated and they will do it better.
Okay, so kind of going back to Maslow's theory of acceptance and mastery and feeling like they're able to master something. Okay, so feeding that level. All right, both good ideas, right? So rethink the reward, showing that money is not really. I mean, it's a motivator because it makes us feel more comfortable. It puts us right in the middle of that homeostasis, right? We don't have to worry about food. We don't have to worry about being bored, right? We're right there in the middle, and our bodies are physiologically feeling satiated. Making mastery cool, figuring out ways to make things that people feel more accepted. Come up with a higher purpose for many of you that are going into some kind of management. Making sure that your mission statement or your goal of your company is felt throughout the organization, right? Because if people feel like, again, they belong to something, they're going to be more motivated to acting towards that. In the realm of mental health or substance abuse, getting people to understand that they can have a better way of life. Because with addiction, especially, I'm going with addiction because the motivation levels vary significantly in addiction. Going back to addiction, if we have somebody that's coming in because they're in the throes of addiction and they're not seeing that their family is being torn apart, helping them to experience the motivation of what it would be like to not have that family, because at some point they're going to hit rock bottom, right? So helping them to understand that of what they stand to lose and internalizing that, because just telling them or having people tell them could come off as a nuisance. So meeting them halfway, meeting them on their level and bringing them up to motivation to help them through whatever it is that they're going through, right? Punishment. Get rid of punishment. Punishment is seldom, especially in a workplace, is seldom helpful. It could be if we're trying to achieve certain things, for example, bad behavior. If somebody's coming to work late every time, look at your policies. Do they need to be there at work? Or if they do need to be there because they're replacing somebody and it's now affecting other people, then maybe you could look at some kind of punishment for redirecting those behaviors. But by and large, punishment does not promote creativity. It actually stifles it. So again, menial tasks, punishment will probably work, but for the cognitive tasks like Dan Pink talked about, not so much. Okay. So anyway, those are some really great ideas. I thought I'd share that with you because it really does play a lot with motivation and what you're going to be doing in the field. So any questions for me, or does anybody have a comment that they would like to add on this topic?
Yeah, I want just to add something that Pierre said. Like, when somebody is doing a good job, like for me, for example, at my job, when they said, "Yo, you are doing good," the next week I don't gonna come to work. I don't know why.
Okay, so self-fulfillment might be a problem. Yeah, I mean, you want to feel self-fulfilled, and when somebody gives you that motivation, you might want something a little higher, right?
I don't know, and I realized that even in my family, when they say to me I'm doing good, it's like kind of I tell myself, "Yo, it's good. You are already doing good, so you don't need to do better again."
Okay, so now you're feeling bored.
I guess.
All right. Good point. Thank you, Shuffle. All right. Anybody else?
My old boss had a saying, if you don't mind me throwing it out there.
Go for it.
He always told me to don't work for the company, don't work for the managers, work for yourself.
Yeah.
Even if you are technically working for a company, just focus on you're doing this for you. You're not so much worried about what other people think.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great philosophy. And to expand on that, and again, this talks to the business model, but yeah, you want to do things for you, but wouldn't it be even better if you could, if what you want and what the company wants are both aligned, right? If what again, going back to therapy, if what the individual, what the client wants, and what the family wants, if they can all get what they want and live harmoniously, and meet their goals, that's the best option, right? Everybody lives happily ever after in most cases. So yeah, just some food for thought for you. Thank you for your attention today. I'm going to stop recording here.